Nobody expected what happened when Mark Zuckerberg called Elon Musk's companies overrated gimmicks in front of 2,000 tech leaders. What Musk did next destroyed Zuckerberg's reputation forever. This is the incredible story of how the world's most innovative entrepreneur completely humiliated the man who thought he ruled Silicon Valley, and why what happened that day is still talked about in boardrooms across America. It was the morning of September 15th at the Global Technology Summit in San Francisco. The most powerful names in tech had gathered at the prestigious Moscone Center for what was being called the event of the decade. Apple's Tim Cook was there. Google's Sundar Pichai had flown in from Mountain View. Amazon's executives filled the front rows, but all eyes were on two men. Elon Musk, the maverick billionaire, who had revolutionized electric cars, space travel, and social media, and Mark Zuckerberg, the calculated CEO who had built the world's largest social network and was now betting everything on the metaverse. The tension between them had been building for months. Zuckerberg had watched with growing frustration as Musk's companies dominated headlines. Tesla's stock price kept climbing. SpaceX was launching rockets like clockwork, and worst of all, X, the platform Musk had bought and transformed, was stealing users from Facebook and Instagram every single day. For Mark Zuckerberg, a man who had built his empire on being the smartest person in every room, watching Elon Musk get all the attention was unbearable. But today was going to be different. Today, Zuckerberg had a plan to put Musk in his place, once and for all. The summit had started with the usual presentations, CEOs talking about innovation, market trends, and the future of technology. But everyone was waiting for the main event, the panel discussion titled, "The Future of Human Connection," featuring both Musk and Zuckerberg. As the two billionaires walked onto the stage, the energy in the room was electric. Here were two of the most powerful men in the world, representing completely different visions of the future. Zuckerberg, dressed in his signature gray t-shirt and jeans, looked confident, almost smug. He had prepared for this moment for weeks. Musk, wearing a simple black blazer, appeared relaxed, but those who knew him could see something else in his eyes: anticipation. The moderator was Sarah Chen, a respected tech journalist from TechCrunch, who had covered both men for years. She understood the significance of having them together on one stage. "Gentlemen, welcome to what I'm sure will be a fascinating discussion," she began, her voice carrying the weight of the moment. The audience of 2,000 tech leaders, investors, and journalists leaned forward in anticipation. Sarah started with softball questions, market predictions, regulatory challenges, the usual corporate speak that filled most tech conferences. Zuckerberg answered, with his typical measured responses, talking about Meta's commitment to innovation, the potential of virtual reality, and the importance of building the metaverse. Musk's answers were characteristically direct. He spoke about sustainable energy, the need to become a multiplanetary species, and the importance of free speech on digital platforms. But both men were clearly holding back. They were circling each other like prizefighters, waiting for the right moment to strike. The audience could feel the tension building. These weren't just two CEOs discussing business strategy. This was personal. For 20 minutes, the conversation remained professional, polite, safe. Then Sarah asked the question that would change everything. "Mark, there's been a lot of discussion lately about whether some high-profile tech companies are more focused on publicity than actual innovation. What's your take on that criticism?" Zuckerberg's eyes lit up. This was his moment, the moment he had been preparing for, rehearsing, waiting for. He was about to destroy Elon Musk's reputation in front of the most important audience in technology. Mark Zuckerberg leaned forward in his chair, a slight smile playing on his lips. "Well, that's an interesting question, Sarah," he began, his voice carrying the confidence of someone who thought he was about to deliver a knockout blow. "I think there's a fundamental difference between real innovation and marketing stunts." The room fell silent. Everyone could feel what was coming. Zuckerberg continued, his voice getting stronger, more confident. "I mean, Let's be honest about what we're seeing in the market today. Some companies spend more money on publicity than actual research and development. He paused, making sure everyone was listening, making sure the cameras were focused on him. When I look at certain companies, he said, glancing deliberately at Musk, Tesla, SpaceX, even this whole X rebranding thing, I have to ask myself, where's the substance? Where's the real innovation? The audience was stunned. Zuckerberg was going directly after Musk's companies, in front of 2,000 of the most influential people in technology, but he wasn't finished. Electric cars? Zuckerberg continued, his voice taking on a dismissive tone. Other companies were working on that decades ago. General Motors had the EV1 in the 1990s. Toyota had been perfecting hybrid technology for years. He was warming up now, enjoying the attention, relishing the opportunity to take down his rival. Rockets, he said with a slight laugh. NASA was doing that when we were kids. The technology isn't new, it's just been repackaged with better marketing. The camera panned to Musk, who was sitting perfectly still, his expression unreadable. His hands were folded in his lap. His face showed no emotion whatsoever. Zuckerberg pressed his attack harder. Social media platforms, he said, gesturing to himself with false modesty. Well, we know who really pioneered that space. Facebook didn't just create a platform, we created an entire industry. We connected 3 billion people across the globe. We built the infrastructure that every other social media company, including X, depends on today. The audience was riveted. This wasn't just corporate competition anymore. This was character assassination. I think what we're seeing from some companies, Zuckerberg continued, his voice now dripping with condescension, is a lot of what I call overrated gimmicks, dressed up as breakthrough technology. The phrase hung in the air like a weapon. Overrated gimmicks. It's easy to make headlines, Zuckerberg said, looking directly at Musk now. It's easy to promise the impossible and get people excited. It's much harder to build sustainable, profitable businesses that actually change people's lives in measurable ways. He leaned back in his chair, clearly satisfied with himself. He had just called Elon Musk's entire business empire overrated gimmicks, in front of the most important audience in tech. The room was dead silent. Sarah Chen, the moderator, was visibly uncomfortable. This had gone far beyond a typical panel discussion. She was witnessing a public execution. Elon, she said carefully, would you like to respond to those comments? For a moment, Musk said nothing. He just sat there, looking at Zuckerberg, with what could only be described as amusement. The silence stretched on. 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds. The audience was holding its breath. Then, slowly, Elon Musk began to smile. Mark, he said quietly, his voice so calm it was almost a whisper, I think you've made a mistake. Zuckerberg's confident expression faltered slightly. What mistake is that? Musk's smile grew wider. You're assuming, he said, pausing for effect. I came here to play defense. What happened next would be replayed on every tech blog, news channel, and social media platform. For months to come, Elon Musk reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out what looked like a simple black device, about the size of a smartphone. But this wasn't just any device. Mark, Musk's, holding up the object for everyone to see. You mentioned gimmicks. Let me show you what real innovation looks like. Zuckerberg's eyes narrowed. What is that? This, Musk said, his voice taking on the tone of someone who was about to change the world, is something my teams at Tesla, SpaceX, and Neuralink have been working on for the past 3 years. He held the device higher so everyone in the auditorium could see it. We call it the neural bridge. The audience leaned forward. Even the camera operators moved closer. Journalists were frantically pulling out their phones to record this moment. You see, Mark, Musk continued, his voice getting stronger, more confident, while you've been spending $100 billion trying to convince people to strap plastic goggles to their face and pretend they're in a virtual world. He paused for dramatic effect. We've been working on actual human-computer integration. Zuckerberg's face went pale. Musk stood up from his chair, still holding the neural bridge device. This device can read human neural patterns and translate them directly into digital commands. No headsets, no controllers, no awkward hand gestures in the air. Just pure, thought-to-computer communication. The room erupted in whispers, the sound of 2,000 people simultaneously trying to process what they were hearing. We've already completed successful trials with 27 paralyzed patients, Musk continued, his voice carrying the weight of scientific breakthrough. They can now control computers, write emails, navigate the internet, and communicate with their families, using nothing but their thoughts. But Musk wasn't finished. Tesla vehicles can now be summoned and controlled mentally. SpaceX engineers are using this technology to control rocket systems in real time during launches, and X users, in our beta program, can compose and send posts, just by thinking them. The audience was stunned into silence, but Musk was just getting started with his systematic destruction of Mark Zuckerberg. But here's the really interesting part, Musk said, his eyes locked on Zuckerberg's increasingly nervous face. We've also been monitoring social media engagement patterns through neural feedback analysis. Want to guess what we discovered? Zuckerberg didn't respond. He couldn't respond. His mouth was slightly open, his confident demeanor completely shattered. We discovered that platforms like Facebook and Instagram, Musk continued, his voice taking on a clinical tone, are actually causing measurable psychological damage to users. The constant comparison, the addictive scrolling, the dopamine manipulation, it's literally rewiring people's brains in harmful ways. Musk let that sink in for a moment. The implications were staggering. Our neural monitoring shows that the average Facebook user experiences a 15% increase in cortisol levels, a 23% decrease in serotonin production, and measurable changes in brain structure, consistent with addictive behavior patterns. The room was completely silent, except for the soft hum of air conditioning, and the occasional camera click. So while you've been building what you call human connection, Musk said, making air quotes with his free hand, you've actually been building addiction machines that are making people more isolated, more depressed, and more anxious than ever before. The camera showed Zuckerberg's face, and it was clear he was starting to panic. His hands were shaking slightly. Sweat was visible on his forehead, but Musk's devastating assault on Zuckerberg's empire was just getting started. Musk began walking across the stage, still holding the neural bridge device, his confidence growing with every step. You want to talk about gimmicks, Mark? He said, his voice echoing through the silent auditorium. Let's talk about the metaverse. The audience was completely captivated. This was no longer a panel discussion. This was a public execution. You've spent over $100 billion, Musk continued, trying to build a virtual world that nobody wants to use. Your own employees refuse to spend time in it. Your user engagement numbers are so bad that you've stopped reporting them publicly. Musk turned to face the audience, speaking directly to the 2,000 tech leaders who were hanging on his every word. Meta's metaverse division, Reality Labs, lost $13.7 billion last year alone. $13.7 billion on a product that fewer than 200,000 people use regularly. He paused, letting those numbers sink in. That's $68,500 lost for every active user. You could have bought each user a luxury car and still had money left over.
The audience was stunned by the brutal mathematical reality of Meta's failure. But Musk wasn't finished dismantling Zuckerberg's reputation. Meanwhile, he said, turning back to face Zuckerberg directly, Tesla has revolutionized transportation. We're not just building electric cars, Mark. We're building a sustainable future. Musk's voice grew stronger, more passionate. Our vehicles drive themselves. Our factories run on renewable energy. Our supercharger network is powering the entire industry's transition away from fossil fuels. We've prevented over 50 million tons of carbon dioxide emissions. That's not marketing, that's measurable environmental impact. He held up the neural bridge device again. SpaceX isn't just launching rockets, Mark. We're making life multiplanetary. We've reduced the cost of space travel by 90%. We're sending astronauts to the International Space Station for 1/10 the cost of previous missions. We're planning the first human missions to Mars. We're literally expanding human consciousness beyond Earth. The room remained completely silent except for Musk's voice. And X? Musk continued, we didn't just rebrand a social media platform. We're building the everything app. Financial services, video streaming, job searching, news distribution, all integrated into one platform that actually respects user privacy and protects free speech. Musk walked closer to Zuckerberg's chair. But this, he said, holding up the neural bridge device, this is just the beginning. While you've been trying to trap people in virtual reality, we've been working on actual reality enhancement. Direct, neural interfaces that could cure depression, restore mobility to paralyzed patients, and allow humans to communicate at the speed of thought. He paused, letting the magnitude of what he was saying sink in. So when you call my companies overrated gimmicks, Mark, you're not just attacking me, you're attacking the future of human civilization. Zuckerberg tried to respond, opening his mouth to speak, but Musk cut him off with a raised hand. And here's what I find most interesting about this whole conversation, Musk continued, his voice taking on an almost philosophical tone. You built Facebook by stealing the idea from your Harvard classmates. The Winklevoss twins sued you for theft of intellectual property and won $65 million. Cameron and Tyler Winklevoss, along with Divya Nadrunda, had the original idea for a social network at Harvard. You took their concept and claimed it as your own. The criticism was surgical in its precision. You've grown Facebook by copying features from every successful app that comes along. TikTok gets popular, so you create Reels. Snapchat has stories, so you add stories to Instagram. Clubhouse has audio rooms, so you copy that too. Your entire strategy is, wait for someone else to innovate, then copy them. Musk's voice grew stronger, more confident. Your entire business model is built on surveillance capitalism. You spy on your users, collect their personal data without meaningful consent, and sell it to advertisers. You've turned human connection into a commodity, privacy into a product, personal information into profit. He gestured to the audience, his voice rising. But innovation, he said, real innovation requires risk. It requires being willing to fail. It requires putting humanity's future ahead of quarterly profit margins. It requires actually building something new, instead of just copying what others have built. Musk walked back toward his chair, but he didn't sit down. Instead, he turned to address the entire audience. Everyone in this room knows the difference between a real innovator and a copycat. They know the difference between someone who builds the future and someone who just tries to monetize it. The audience was completely captivated. Many were nodding in agreement. Others were taking notes. All of them knew they were witnessing something historic. Musk finally sat back down, but his assault on Zuckerberg was far from over. Mark asked where the substance is in my companies. Let me answer that question with some concrete facts. The audience was hanging on every word. Tesla is now worth more than the next 10 automakers combined. We've forced the entire automotive industry to go electric. Countries around the world are banning internal combustion engines because of what we've proven is possible. Norway, UK, France, they're all following our lead. We've sold over 5 million electric vehicles. We've built the world's largest network of fast charging stations. We've created over 100,000 jobs in sustainable technology. We've proven that electric cars can be faster, safer, and more efficient than gas cars. Musk's voice was gaining momentum. SpaceX has successfully landed and reused rockets more than 200 times. We've saved NASA billions of dollars. We've reignited America's leadership in space exploration after decades of stagnation. We're currently the only American company capable of sending astronauts to space. We've launched over 4,000 Starlink satellites, providing high-speed internet to remote areas around the world. We're connecting people in rural Africa, disaster zones, and developing nations to the global internet for the first time. Musk held up the neural bridge device one more time. And this technology, he said, we're already in clinical trials with the FDA. We're working with Johns Hopkins, Mayo Clinic, and Stanford Medical Center. Within 5 years, this will be available to help people with paralysis, depression, Parkinson's disease, and Alzheimer's. He finally turned back to Zuckerberg, who was sitting in stunned silence, his face pale and drawn. "So Mark," Musk said quietly, "when you call my companies overrated gimmicks, you're really telling us more about your own insecurities than about my businesses." The room erupted in applause, not polite conference applause, but genuine, enthusiastic approval. But Musk wasn't finished. "You see," he continued, waiting for the applause to die down, "the difference between us isn't just about technology, it's about vision. You're trying to escape reality by building virtual worlds. I'm trying to improve reality by building better tools. You're asking people to strap screens to their faces and pretend they're somewhere else. I'm giving them the ability to actually go somewhere else, like Mars." The applause grew louder. "You're building addiction machines disguised as connection platforms. I'm building actual solutions to humanity's biggest challenges: climate change, space exploration, neurological diseases, communication freedom." Musk sat back in his chair, finally, and looked directly at Zuckerberg. "So yes, Mark," he said, his voice calm but devastating, "there is a difference between real innovation and marketing stunts. There is a difference between building the future and just trying to profit from it. There is a difference between changing the world and just claiming you have." He paused for one final devastating moment. "The question is," Musk said, with a slight smile, "which one of us is which?" The silence that followed was deafening. Mark Zuckerberg, the man who had confidently walked onto that stage, planning to humiliate Elon Musk, sat frozen in his chair. His calculated attack had backfired spectacularly. Sarah Chen, the moderator, clearly sensing the tension and the completeness of Zuckerberg's defeat, tried to move to the next question, but the damage was done. Everyone in that room knew what they had just witnessed. In less than 20 minutes, Musk had dismantled Zuckerberg's credibility, exposed the weaknesses in Meta's strategy, and demonstrated why he was considered the world's most innovative entrepreneur. The audience knew they had witnessed something historic. This wasn't just a disagreement between two CEOs. This was a public demonstration of the difference between real vision and corporate opportunism, between building the future and just talking about it. As the panel ended and both men left the stage, the tech world was already buzzing with reactions. People were pulling out their phones, texting colleagues, posting on social media. The consensus was unanimous. Elon Musk had just delivered the most devastating public takedown in Silicon Valley history. Within hours, clips of Musk's response were trending on every social media platform. The hashtag overrated gimmicks became a meme, but not in the way Zuckerberg had intended. People were using it to mock Meta's metaverse, Facebook's data collection practices, and Zuckerberg's lack of original innovation. Tech journalists called it the most brutal intellectual dismantling ever captured on video. Business analysts began questioning Meta's strategy and leadership. Investors started looking more seriously at Tesla, SpaceX, and Musk's other ventures. Meta's stock price dropped 8% in after-hours trading. Tesla's stock price rose 12%. The market had spoken. But perhaps the most telling reaction came from the other CEOs who had witnessed the exchange. In private conversations afterward, many admitted that Musk had articulated what they had been thinking for years: the difference between innovation and imitation, between building the future and just trying to profit from it, between taking real risks and playing it safe with other people's ideas. Mark Zuckerberg had walked into that conference, thinking he could embarrass Elon Musk by calling his companies overrated gimmicks. Instead, he had given Musk the perfect opportunity to demonstrate exactly why he was considered the most important entrepreneur of his generation. The lesson was clear, and it resonated far beyond Silicon Valley. When you try to diminish someone who has actually changed the world, you'd better be prepared for them to remind everyone exactly how they did it. Sometimes, the most powerful response to an attack is simply telling the truth. Musk had exposed Zuckerberg's fundamental weakness, his reliance on copying others, rather than creating something genuinely new. He had contrasted Meta's surveillance capitalism with his own company's focus on solving real problems. He had shown the difference between virtual reality escapism and actual reality improvement. Most importantly, he had demonstrated something that every entrepreneur in that room understood. True innovation requires courage. It requires the willingness to risk everything on an idea that might fail.
It requires building something the world has never seen before, instead of just copying what already exists. That day, Elon Musk destroyed Mark Zuckerberg's reputation in front of 2,000 tech leaders, simply by being exactly who he always claimed to be, a true innovator in a world full of imitators. But the story doesn't end there. In the weeks that followed, the ripple effects of that confrontation continued to spread throughout Silicon Valley. 3 major venture capital firms pulled their investments from Meta's Reality Labs division. 2 of Meta's top engineers quit to join SpaceX, and Mark Zuckerberg was forced to appear on 5 different financial news programs, trying to explain why his company's strategy was still viable. Meanwhile, Elon Musk announced that the neural bridge technology would begin human trials within 6 months. Tesla's pre-orders increased by 40%. SpaceX secured 3 new government contracts, and X's user engagement reached an all-time high. The tech industry had learned a valuable lesson that day. Don't challenge someone to prove their worth unless you're prepared for them to actually do it. Mark Zuckerberg had tried to diminish Elon Musk by calling his life's work overrated gimmicks. Instead, he had accidentally given Musk the perfect stage to demonstrate exactly why those gimmicks were actually the building blocks of humanity's future. In the end, the man who thought he could control the narrative had lost control of his own reputation. And the man who simply told the truth about his achievements had reminded the world why real innovation will always triumph over corporate imitation. When you attack someone who has actually changed the world, you'd better be prepared for them to remind everyone exactly how they did it. Elon Musk destroyed Mark Zuckerberg, not with insults or attacks, but with facts, evidence, and the quiet confidence that comes from actually changing the world. Sometimes the most devastating weapon in any confrontation is simply the truth.
If you enjoyed watching Elon Musk completely destroy Mark Zuckerberg's reputation, then you'll love our other videos featuring the most epic confrontations in business and politics. Hit that subscribe button and the notification bell because we upload incredible stories like this every single day. Don't miss the next dramatic showdown. Subscribe now.